Can everyone still hear me? Okay,
Yeah, I can hear you now.
excellent. Makes sense. All right. Again, we were talking about cybersecurity. We would have done cybersecurity and AI today, but my colleague that's doing AI is not opportune to come and join the call today. So I'll just be taking the cybersecurity session today. Um, we had some few questions yesterday coming about the opportunities in cybersecurity as well as the modules that we currently offer to people or the trainings we currently offer. I would so within the first module before I go into cryptography, I will show you um, the the courses we offer. I will show you some of the opportunities we have in cybersecurity. If you don't mind, can you mute yourself? Okay. So, talking about the opportunities that we have in cybersecurity, we have top jobs. Like last year, we had the top jobs were chief information security officer, cryptographer. That's what I want to teach you about today. Nothing too more complex than what it is already. Although this is like a low level information I'm going to be giving you today. So if you want to know more about it, then you come to one of our classes. Then we have the chief security engineer, the cyber security analyst, cyber security manager, cybersecurity consultant. Remember what I said yesterday? If you are a project manager and you know about cybersecurity, that's the role for you, cybersecurity manager. And you'll be looking at earning approximately over £100,000, over £100,000 in a year. That's like average salary. If you are a chief security engineer, maybe you're not interested in managing people, then you could be looking at say close to 100,000 a year. Then if you are just a consultant, you could either go consulting and collect day rates, or collect or be a permanent staff and collect something close to 85 or 83,000 pounds, between that range. Then, if you're a pen tester, you could actually open your own company and start pen, because there's a lot of requests for pen testing these days because of the way organizations and companies are hit. Then we also have um, the cybersecurity architect role, which is more on the very high on demand side now. This year, I think the average rate for that will be going a bit over £150,000 a year. But mind you, it depends on how you relate how you can relate to taxation. The not the what's it called, the currency you have here is showing dollars, but it can be translated into pounds, and the variation between the dollars and the pounds are not that much. In fact, people do earn this amount. If you go on job sites and just maybe search for cybersecurity engineer, you see the rates that they offer. Although some others can be offering much lower rates, but the average is what we are showing. I'm showing you here. Then we have forensic experts, but these are people that are a bit more seasoned in their course, and say between 5 to 10 years experience. And these experiences can actually be gathered from different places. So we talked about the benefits of cybersecurity yesterday, identifying the vulnerabilities and threats and risk within an internal or external environment can help you manage risk better. And we also talked about the security requirements. um, Being able to understand what the requirements are will be able to help you propose what the controls could be and how to solve those problems that you could actually filter out of the risk assessment that you've carried out. Then we also talked about peace of mind. When you know something, you kind of rest assured that everything's working okay. As against you don't know much, and you go with the people that say ignorance is bliss. that these days it's no longer ignorance is bliss. If you don't know about something, it's going to hit you hard. So you better get to understand and know about cybersecurity, so you don't get exposed. It helps you also to save some money. When you are maybe hacked with a ransomware and people are demanding resource from you, you really don't have much options than to pay them off if the information you have is really critical. And if it's not so critical, you would also lose time there, and to collect all your information or rebuild the information that you've already saved initially. Then yeah, talking about ignorance again, ignorance is not bliss. If in this case. So before we talk about cryptography, I'd like to quickly stop the share and share with you what I like to share with you on. Let's see. I'll just go to my website and share with you what I have on there. So just give me a minute. I'll go to this. Let's say technologies. So we are currently running a boot camp which will be starting next month as well. So if you go to our boot camp section, you will see some of the courses that we offer. I'm going to share the screen now. Sorry, I thought I was sharing already. Let's see, show them. Yeah, that one. So share. So that's it. Can everyone see the screen? We have data science and networking. We also have some other courses that we train on, which are not typically data science and networking. Around CISSP, we also train people on ISO 27001, CompTIA Network Plus. We also train people on ITIL, GDPR, Cisco. We have something on business analysis as well, but we don't really major on business analysis. We have an external party that can help us out with that training. I think it's a 5 days training. Then we have troubleshooting course as well, but that is also relating to networking. Then we have load balancing, our load balancer course, to teach you everything you need to know about load balancing. We also have firewall courses which are not stated here, on checkpoint, on we have firewalls on Fortinet, firewall trainings on Palo Alto as well, and Cisco ESA. Cisco ESA is almost fading out now, and we are going into Cisco Firepower all the time. Everywhere you go now, you see Cisco Firepower everywhere, and that's because of the new or next generation solution that firewall brings into the market. So yeah, this is a bit of what we do, and we'll be populating more of our courses online very soon. So we'll go back to our course. So let me share. Okay, share. All right, we are on module 2 now. It's on cryptography overview. So what's cryptography? Simply put, is a way of mixing information up and making sure that that information that is being mixed up is not understood by unintended people that shouldn't have access in the first place. So once you have the required access, maybe you are allowed to access that information, you should be the only person that should actually access that information. So theoretically speaking, cryptography is the science and study of protecting information, whether in transit or in rest or in use. So those 3 different tiers of protection is what cryptography gives to you. So when cryptography can be in 2 formats, can be in plain text data or ciphertext data. And plain text data is something you can read, and in ciphertext format is something you cannot read by applying encryption. So if you encrypt something, it means you've turned it to gibberish, something that is not knowledgeable to a human interpreter. But maybe the systems could use algorithms to decipher what that information is, but on a just a first sight, you won't be able to explain or decipher that information. Then we have what we call the cryptography. What cryptography can help us achieve. It helps you to achieve confidentiality and integrity mostly. It has no effect on availability as such, but more on confidentiality and integrity. We have what we call the security triad, and the security triad deals with confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Most people like to call it CIA of security. If you're able to fulfill these three different conditions, then you could rest assured that you are secure. Cryptography helps us in two of these major areas. We have three major areas, but cryptography helps us in two of that major areas. Redundancy will help us in the availability side. So you have two or three more systems working at the same time, making sure that there is a backup for another solution. That's what provides us the ability to give availability to customers. So when you encrypt the data, you are actually working at the confidentiality of that data. What of integrity? Integrity has to do with hashing. When you hash a data, that means you're able to put a data in a state or see a data in a state that if anything is done to that data, the hash that you've created for that data is going to change. And if that hash changes by any chance, that means that information has been tampered with. So non-repudiation simply means you cannot disprove what you have sent, or you have a way of proving that the information you've sent actually came from you. So by asymmetric key, for example, when we say asymmetric key, we are referring to two or more keys, two keys really, which is the public key and the private key. So we use this asymmetric key to achieve non-repudiation. So a recipient can assure that the identity came from a sender, and I'll show you shortly how that is possible. So we have the concept of cryptography and how it works, which I'm going to be talking about now. Cryptography is all about keys. These keys are not physical keys, they are more like the electronic keys, but just imagine them as keys to your door or keys to your home or to your house. So, and they are, as every other thing is in the computers, they could be read in zeros and ones once it gets to the physical layer. So we have keys, and the two major type of keys we have in cryptography are the symmetric key and the asymmetric key. Symmetric key simply means you have one key. Asymmetric key simply means you have two keys. So, in my opinion, it's easy for you to use one key to open all the doors in your house, right? When you have one key to open all the doors in your house, that means you have some issues with security, in a way, and put it that way, in quote. But when you have more than one key, you have two keys, and maybe only, and you don't put those two keys on the same bunch where you get to lost one bunch and you have someone take the keys to your own to your entire home. So let's say you put the separate keys on two different bunch, you have better security than you do on a single bunch of keys when you have all your keys on a single bunch, right? So asymmetric key is simply a single key, but you can use it to encrypt a large information. So it's good for encrypting large information because of its speed of operation, but it's good also for a small group of people. So you have, say, 2 or 3 people exchanging these keys and transfer information from one to another using this. Most times we call it shared keys or pre-shared keys. Using these shared keys, which means one single key, but it's been shared by 2 or more people. So once the numbers start growing to, say, 5, 10, 15, then this key, the way it's being distributed is, we start having problems with securing the way these keys are being distributed, especially when the key is going out of an environment to a different environment. So if a third party wanted to share information with us, and we are only using a symmetric key, it will be a bit difficult for us to be able to secure how that key actually gets to that third party. And mostly when the numbers start increasing, that's where we start having problems. I'll show you the formula that we normally use for calculating asymmetric key distribution. So it's good for small group and it's good for large data. But asymmetric key is good for small data and is good for large groups. And it's very good with key distribution. So the more the people that are going to be using this key, or the number of people that would have to use a key was the reason why asymmetric key was actually designed. So when we start having, say, 200 people trying to send information between themselves, then the ideal kind of key to use then will be asymmetric key. So you could use a symmetric key to encrypt the full data and use asymmetric key to encrypt the symmetric key, if you understand what I'm talking about. So you have a key, which is symmetric key, using to encrypt a large data. Then you are using asymmetric key to encrypt that one symmetric key, so you could send it to a lot of people. So we have different algorithms in cryptography. Algorithm simply means a finite list of instructions that's used to perform a task. So you have you've seen an engine, an engine before, a grinding engine, for example, for grinding corn or grinding anything, or rice or anything that you can grind. Okay, maybe just use something that we are familiar with. Maybe a blender. You have a blender at home that you use for blending fruits, right? If you put fruits inside the blender, right, it will blend. You will no longer see the fruit, you see the blended fruit, right? Something like that is what we call the algorithm. So you have an entry point where the information goes in, and you have an exit point when information goes out. Just that our blender doesn't have a hole underneath where that information goes out, but we have an entry point and we also have an exit point, even though it comes in and out from the same place. So encryption algorithm is simply a symmetric or asymmetric algorithm. So if it's a symmetric algorithm, it's, remember what we talked about symmetric key, it's just akin to that symmetric key. Symmetric algorithm is faster, if asymmetric algorithm is slower. So that's something you need to take note of when we start talking about encryption algorithms. For hashing is simply a one-way mathematical function that makes an input and produces, Adeshola, I'm sorry for not adding you on time. It's just to concentrating on. I was concentrating on my slides. So we have what we call collision. Okay, like I said about hashing, it's just a one-way mathematical function that takes an input and produces a single number or an integer. I'll show you that shortly, how you can form a hash function from an information using even your Microsoft document or Microsoft Word application. So collision is an attack against hashing. So when you impute an information into that algorithm, right, and you impute two different information into an algorithm and it produces the same result, then we call that collision. That's what we call collision. When two or more files create the same output, which is not supposed to happen. So if you put, say for example, carrots in a blender, you blend carrots and you pour it out, right? And you blend apple, and when you're pouring it out, it's coming out as carrots. You know something is definitely wrong somewhere. So that's, I'm just using an analogy. I hope you understand. So if you do not want that to happen, you don't want a collision to happen, you don't want two different files producing the same result, what you want to do, as in save yourself from hackers trap, and put it that way, you could add what we call salt to your data. And when you add salt to your data, it prevents collision from happening. Salt simply means you add more characters, or it could just add some gibberish, or it could take another information and add it to the information you are sending. That information will now be called a salt. The information you're adding to the original information will be called a salt. So it could just be asterisks you're adding, or it could just be ones and twos, it could just be zeros you're adding to just pad the information. So that could be classed as salting the information you're putting into the algorithm. Okay. Then we have what we call the PKI. We have what we call the PKI environment. When we talk about PKI, we are simply referring to a public key infrastructure. It's designed to verify and authenticate the identity of individuals within an enterprise taking part in a data exchange. So anywhere you hear PKI, just know that they are trying to prove the authenticity of individuals coming into that environment. That's why PKI is very important for every organization and any organization. And cryptography is like a root, a base for security within an environment. And PKI is one way of achieving what cryptography was designed to do. Okay, so we have an infrastructure that looks like this. We always have a CA at the top. So PKI could come in different formats. It consists of both hardwares and softwares, policies, that creates and manages and stores and distributes and revoke keys and digital certificates. So I think we highlighted yesterday that for us to be able to secure information, we could either secure information using software solution, hardware solution, or just documentation or governance around an information that could help us protect that information from being misused, or that from not being used in the proper way. Sorry for that. At the top is the certificate authority. You have the CA here. So the CA is like the brain behind the PKI environment. So if you have the CA here, CA helps us with revoking the certificates and helps us with validating that those certificates are also valid within the time frame that it has been created for. So the CA keeps track of all the certificates and maintain a certificate revocation list. So if a certificate is compromised, the CA would know and they would revoke that certificate. And if a certificate is expired as well, that certificate will also be revoked. So we have different entities or bodies that can actually affect the CA. Things like your validation authority or registration authority. The only difference between validation authority and registration authority that we have here would be the validation authority is a third party kind of setup, while the registration authority is in-house. So registration authority acts more like a sub CA, if you know what I mean. So a subordinate CA is what we call it. Subordinate certificate authority. So it's acting like gathering the information from the user and sending that information to the CA, more like an intermediary, and getting that information from the CA for registering that individual or that application or that service or that organization into that certificate authority body. So the certificate authority could either be in-house or external. If the certificate authority is in-house, we call it self-signed certificate. And if the certificate that we get is external, we'll call it the public certificate. And most external bodies like Google, Yahoo, all these big players in the market, maybe AWS, Microsoft, and so forth and so on. Things everybody will normally have access to, that the public will always have access to. They will generally use the public certificate authority, and we have some of them like the Verizon. Those are established bodies for certificate authority, I think all these other big players are actually joining them now: Google, Microsoft, and so forth and so on. But mostly they are third parties separated from these companies' working systems. So there could be a subordinate CA, which is also known as the RA. Talked about that just now. And most CAs are removed from the network access to protect the integrity of the system. So that could actually be your VA, your validation authority, and or your CA, your certificate authority. So your certificate authority could either be in-house or external, but your validation authority will always be external. But it's only acting as a subsidiary between the certificate authority and the in-house application or the in-house user. So certificates are mostly tied to individuals or tied to systems or individual systems within the corporation. So there will be a worker or someone that's internal that hosts the certificate for that corporation. So the corporation, the reason for certificates is not really because it's going to secure your information per se. It's just proving that the information that you are sending is coming from a legit environment and it's not coming from an environment that is not legitimate. So initially, before 2019, 2018, say thereabout, hackers were always scared of using certificates because they've not been able to produce their own certificate environment at the time. But now, no matter the certificate authority that you have, you need to now verify that that certificate authority is one that is being accepted by the generic public, because we have hackers now that come up with their own kind of certificate, which is akin to the normal certificate. So you will not really know the difference except you know who is actually certifying the hackers, who's actually certifying the good users from the bad users. So that you need to take note of. And you can actually find your certificates on your browser. You see the thing that looks like a padlock on your browser. You could click on it and you will see who the certificate authority is from. In fact, I can stop this now and show you that before we continue. I would go to... I'll go back to my site to just show you that. Share this. So you see this padlock right here. So you could click on the padlock and say certificate. It tells me certificate is valid. I want to find out who is issuing the certificate. It tells me it's issued by GoDaddy. So that means GoDaddy is the one hosting this my site. So you could do this for any site that you open up. And GoDaddy is more like a valid certificate authority, and I am sure that I hosted my site with GoDaddy. So this is how to find out who is hosting your site or how you're logged into an environment. As simple as that. If you come for our courses, we will show you, we'll go deeper into that screen I just showed you and talk more about what you need to look out for. I think we will still talk more about it in our class today. Okay, let me share the screen again. I'm here. Okay, share that. All right. So we have what we call the online certificate status protocol, and this status protocol would be used by most PKI systems as an outside entity. We talked about validation authority just now. So this is more like a third-party service that is being created, or that is being created to help organizations validate their certificate. So we have what we call the cross certification. This is simply two organizations coming together to trust themselves. So once two organizations come together and trust themselves, we call that a cross certification, and they can then use certificates from both industries or organizations. So this allows both PKIs to validate certificates generated from either side. So certificate works in a trust model. We have different types of trust model, three major ones, which we're going to be talking about. So trust model simply describes how entities within the enterprise deal with keys and signatures and certificates. So the first one I'm talking about will be the web of trust. Web of trust is simply trusting other people that are within that certificate authority. So trust based on others in the system. So if you are, say for example, in HSBC now, let me use that as an example, right? And HSBC is using what we call web of trust. So your certificate will be based on other people within that corporation using that certificate. And that certificate could be coming from any system within the organization. But most times, organizations will always have a generic or a centralized certificate authority that dishes out the certificates to other systems within the environment using their GP updates and their maybe administrative system that they use within their corporation or organization. So we have the single authority system, which is also called the user's trust based on the CA. This one has a CA at the top, and it doesn't necessarily have the subordinate CAs. It just have the CAs, and every other person is connected to the CA directly. But where we have the hierarchical trust system, which this diagram represents, it's the most secure way of conducting a PKI within an environment. So if you want your certificate to work orderly, and you have a better opportunity to expand your certificates or your certificates within your organization. So if you have just a single certificate authority, before long, management will become an issue. But if you have subordinates that you could use within your organization, then you could split out to different areas within the globe, and you still have a centralized CA that authenticates or that manages your certificates. So we have the X.509 digital certificate details here, which we'll be talking about shortly. The digital certificate is regulated by X.509 standards. So I've just pulled this out of internet to show you the different fields that you might be interested in. I actually have showed you the generic field just now, which told me that I was using GoDaddy. In this case, they are using the certificate is issued by Verizon class 1CA. So if you know if that site will definitely have been using Verizon for their for their services. And this is how the X.509 digital certificate details. This is how it looks like. So X.509 standards is a standard that certificates should measure up to. So if you as a company wants to issue certificates, you should be able to measure up to these standards. Anyway, this is already done for you by many system producers. It could be Apple, it could be Microsoft, it could be Lenovo, any of those, it could be Dell, HP, and so forth and so on. Any of those system producers, they would have a certificate that measure up with the X.509 standards. So it's an electronic file used to verify users' identity, and it provides non-repudiation through the system. So for example, we had a time where Checkpoint, I think it was Checkpoint, they wanted to do away they had issue with internal users logging into maybe a hacker system somewhere. So what they wanted to do was to make sure that all internal users will have to trust a centralized certificate in-house, not just the CA, another centralized certificate in-house, which they tried using their firewall to do. So they created a certificate with the firewall and shared it with all the internal systems. So if the information is not coming, if the information is supposed to come from the internet and it's not coming through that firewall, the system will reject it. So that was one way of helping them stop phishing within their organization. So It's a very highly technical solution that is, but it's simple if you get to understand the technology behind it. So digital certificates will include things like version, serial number, subject, algorithms, signature algorithm, the issuer, the valid date from and the valid date to, and it will also tell you about the key usage and uh, different other options. We also have the public key here. That's one of the major things you should look out for, which I've highlighted here, the public key. And most times it will use the RSA public key, which is an asymmetric key. So we have digital signatures we'll talk about shortly. And when we doing our summary, I might go a bit more in depth into this if we still have the time to do that. Okay, digital signatures, an algorithmic output, a string text designed to ensure the authenticity and integrity of the sender. So that's what digital signatures simply is. It just helps you identify who the sender is and prove the authenticity of the sender. Federal Information Processing Standards, which is FIPS, actually governs digital signature algorithms, which is used for generating and verifying of digital signatures. And we have what we call NIST, and NIST is simply a standard from the American body. And what they do is they've proposed different proposition, and NIST is quite large because it's more like a documented solution that USA government has. They've deployed it in their military environment, which they've now pushed to public sectors to use. So public sectors will have to adhere to these standards if they want to meet with the national security standard of sharing information. So anything that say is going to the military must meet the NIST standards. So, and you know that in America, almost everything is connected to the government. So that's why the NIST standards is quite popular in America. It's also very popular everywhere else in the world because it gives us a good guidance as to how security should, or what our security should measure up to. So NIST proposed that DSA, which is the digital signature algorithm, as a FIPS standard in August 1991 to be used in their digital signature standards. So they were the one that proposed the DSA to be used as a FIPS standard. FIPS is actually more like a regulation in the US government. So Federal Information Processing Standard. So if you want to meet with that regulation, maybe you are in a company that needs to meet up with that regulation, then that's a regulation you must have to adhere to. Then you get the information about that standard. If you just go online and type FIPS 186-2, you see a documentation that tells you about it. Sometimes you might have to buy the regulation, or sometimes you might just have to download the regulation from the government website. Steps of digital signature: verify the sender's identity. First of all, you have to hash a message, and to do the hashing of the message is, as I've just shown you now. Remember, I told you earlier that I would show you how you can use a document application to hash a message. This is how it will finally look like. Let me put it that way. Because the whole process is, you have to go through the whole process of getting the document and trying to sign the document. And when you are in the process of trying to sign the document creates a hash. And after it's created that hash looks like something like this, that starts with 18A and ends with D770. So this is a one-time hash. If you want to sign that information again, it's going to come up with a different hash identity. Then we have encrypt the hash with sender's private key. If you encrypt the hash with sender's private key, what you are actually trying to do is non-repudiation. So recipient decrypts the hash with sender's public key. So if I want to send an information for the public to see and decrypt, my public, one thing we should get to understand is the public key is actually public. That's why they call it public. So anybody can actually have access to the public key, like we saw in our last slide, where we have the public key in the X.509 standard. So you have that public key there. Just go back to it in a bit. Yeah. So you have the public key here. If you click on this public key, you see what the public key looks like. It looks like something like this. So you can copy this out and use it to decrypt a private key, an information that has been encrypted by a private key. Okay. So recipients decrypt the hash with sender's public key. So to summarize on cryptography, we'll just go a bit touching on different points we've talked about and maybe go a bit deeper on them. So types of encryption, again, we have the symmetric encryption and the asymmetric encryption. But on the symmetric encryption side, this is how it looks. You have a key, you have a secret key, and that secret key is going to be used to encrypt a plain text. The plain text now turns to gibberish, which we call the ciphertext. The ciphertext is passed through the same key. Remember, I called it a shared key or a pre-shared key. So it's going to pass through that other key, and that other key is going to decrypt the information. And the other side, you're going to get the same plain text like you got like you started with. So a symmetric encryption is a single key or shared key, one key to encrypt and decrypt the data. So it's good for bulk encryption, which we talked about earlier, because of its speed. So this is the calculation I said I was going to show you. It's a way of distributing the keys. So let's say we have 2 users that need to share this key, right? It will be 2, and the number of users will be n. So it will be 2 minus 1 divided by 2. 2 minus 1 will be 2, and that's 2 minus 1, then that's 1, and that 1 times 2 is 2 divided by 2. That means you only need 1 key. So let's say we start having like 3, right? So 3 minus 1 will be 2, and 2 times 2 will be 4, and 4 divided by 2 will be 2 keys. I'm thinking this formula I put here is the wrong one. The right one should be n into 2 minus 1 divided by 2. I think that's the correct one, because it's astronomical growth. In this case, it will not be astronomical growth. If we try 10, say 10 minus that would just be 18 keys. No, the way it should be is n into 2 minus 1, not 2 into n minus 1. So if we have n into 2 minus 1, we will have say we have two keys, for example. So number of keys will be 2. Number of people that's going to be sharing the keys will be 2, and minus 2 minus 1 will be 1. Now, if we do the same for, say, 10 people, for example, so okay, so it should be n into n minus 1 divided by 2. I'm getting this confused now. So let's try 10. So 10 minus 1 will be 9. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 divided by 2 will give us 8 keys. So we need to now share it to 8 people. So share 8 keys between those 10 people. I think it's more than that. I'll look that up again, and if it needs correction, I'm going to correct it. It doesn't look like the right solution to me. So we have examples of symmetric encryption, and we have what we call the DES, 3DES, AES. All these are examples of symmetric encryption, and we can use all these different type of encryption to encrypt large data. So before we go out of that, I'll just, you can actually check it out on the internet. Let me just give me just 1 minute. Symmetric metrics calculation encryption. Sorry for this. Example, no, it's not showing me. I'm not sure why. Symmetric encryption. Example, I'll just say 2 into n minus 1 divided by 2. Okay, yeah, I was right. It's n into n minus 1 divided by 2. That's correct. So I would make that correction just now. Just give me 1 minute. Go back there. It is n. Okay. Can everyone still see my screen? Let me see if I'm still sharing. Okay, I'll stop sharing. Let me share again. Screen share. Okay, there you go. So yeah, we're almost coming to the end of the class though, but let me just go through that again. I think it will be helpful for someone. We'll play this. Uh-oh. That's not what I wanted. I'll go to there and share this. Yeah, so that's it. It's n into n minus 1 divided by 2. So that would be the right formula. So if we try, say 4, for example, 4 minus 1 is 3. 4 times 3, 12. So we would then need, just for 4 people, we would need 6 keys. Then if we are trying something like 10, that would be 10 times 9. That would be like 90. 90 divided by 2, we now need 45 keys, just for 10 people. Oh, 45, yeah, 45 keys. All right, so we have asymmetric encryption. We talked about symmetric encryption the last time. It just has to do with 2 keys. So one is public and one is private. So you could call it public and secret key. So the public key is always what we use for, depends on what we are doing per time. So if we are doing non-repudiation, we would encrypt with our private key and decrypt with the public key. If we are doing or encrypt with the with our private key and decrypt with the public key. But if we are doing normal transfer of information, we will encrypt with the public key as it is here and decrypt with our private key, because we don't want to share our private key with anyone. So that's what we are going to be using to decrypt information all the time. Then, but for our information for public key is always publicly available, so anybody can grab that information and use it to encrypt the data and send it to us. So because we own that public key, we can then decrypt it. So someone else gets that information, because they don't own the public key, they cannot decrypt it. So example of asymmetric encryption will be Diffie-Hellman, elliptic curve, RSA. So RSA is like the popular one that everybody knows, which is very good and has not had any too much information about cracking yet, although they still keep developing it and increasing the number of keys that it uses, and that's why it's very reliable out there in the market. So we also have 2 key one is public for encrypting and the other one is private for decrypting, which we just explained. So what one key encrypts, the other key decrypts. It's very good for key distribution, like we said earlier, and it helps with confidentiality and non-repudiation. It's not good for bulk encryption, like we mentioned earlier on as well. So due to its slow speed, because it has two keys and it's because the mathematical algorithm that's used to construct these keys, they are very slow with encrypting or decrypting any information. That's why we use it for just encrypting and decrypting the symmetric keys instead of, because we have issues with distributing symmetric keys, but we don't have issues with distributing asymmetric keys. So it's easier for us to distribute the asymmetric keys, do the encryption with the symmetric keys, and send that symmetric key encryption information across, because we've been able to easily manage the keys using asymmetric encryption. Well, there's still so much to talk about. I think this is what our classes can take us for today. If you have any questions you want to ask, you could just put them on the chat. They will be more than happy to answer them for you. Well, if there's no more questions, then I'll just go through the survey that we would want to get from you. If you can send us an email or chat or anything, let us know what we've done well, and let us know what we should stop doing, and let us know what we need to improve on. Then materials for today also will be sent to the email you use for registering for this course. Yes, of course, Harrow Life. You can have a word with us, and we'll be more than happy to assist you. Then, yeah, we'll upload this full information. We'll be sharing more on the webinars than the slides. We found our slides are now more like everywhere on the internet, so we don't want to do that because our slides are very, very good, and because of the work that we've put into it as well. 2020 targets are for us to train, bring people to the awareness, at least 100 people to the awareness of cybersecurity, and we've done a very good work with that, a good job of that. We've informed enough people. I think we've actually done over 200 now with our different classes that we've scheduled for the year. Conscientize people on cybersecurity and to increase value offerings to corporate organizations. If you go through our training, we can certify that you are good with cybersecurity if you pass our tests, and we can actually employ you for a period of time if you comply with our policies. We also have sorry, I'd like to touch on that. Our next event is coming up next month. We'll be talking more on VCP. We'll be talking more on VCP. It's a cloud solution. It's a virtual private cloud. So if you are interested, or VPC, if you're interested, you could get registered with us. Give me a call and get registered with us, and we will contact you. So thank you very much for attending to this class, and it will be a good time having you. If you have any questions now, I'll be more than happy to answer. Excellent. If there's no more questions at this time, I would like to call it a day, and I'll say thank you for attending today's webinar, and it promises to be very enlightening in our next section. If you have friends that are interested as well, please invite them. Thank you for joining. Have a very, very wonderful day.
Good night.
Yeah, have a nice day. Bye.